knows a lot about the science stuff. Professor Dave explains.
In the previous tutorial, we examined how a crime scene is processed until the search for evidence is completed. As time passes, a CS does not remain the same, as is stated by the law of progressive change. However you protect the scene, there is always a chance that evidence might get displaced or contaminated. The CS can get altered due to extreme weather conditions. Freak accidents can occur, destroying the CS altogether. We have already learned that seemingly unimportant evidence might gain importance in the later stages of an investigation. Sometimes the investigator, due to a lack of foresight, may prematurely call the end of the investigation. This may be because the investigator is overconfident about the evidence gathered, because the suspect readily confesses, or because the investigator fails to gather any evidence. However, there have been many cases where there is no doubt about the suspect's identity, but which becomes difficult to reconstruct later. Readily gathered evidence can be evidence planted by the suspect to falsely incriminate someone else. This will hinder crime scene reconstruction. Therefore, the investigator must always remember to have an open and objective mind. No case should be considered an open and shut case at any point of investigation. The investigator will not get another opportunity to look at the CS in the same way once the evidence has been collected. That is why documentation of the scene must be done thoroughly. This will help the investigator in refreshing their outlook of the CS at any stage of investigation, assisting in reconstruction. Successful reconstruction of the event helps in the proper resolution of the case. However, reconstruction is impossible without accurate documentation of the CS. Therefore, if there is any mistake at this stage, it might be too late to rectify it in the future. The most fundamental prerequisite for successful documentation of the CS is that the investigator must be not only a good observer and recorder, but also a good interpreter. Some evidence might answer important questions, while some might warrant further questions. While going through the notes, sketches, and photos of the CS, the investigator must be able to understand and interpret evidence as if they've been teleported to the CS. Thus, the main purpose of documenting is first to keep a record of all the evidence recovered from the CS, and second, to note down all the observations made while investigating the CS. Accurate documentation, along with the evidence collected, helps in strengthening the case in the court of law. There are various techniques associated with documenting a CS. However, no technique is best for a particular CS. In fact, all these techniques complement each other. Usually, more than one technique is required to properly document a CS, and it is often desirable to use as many techniques as possible. Each of these has its own advantages. Let's learn about these different methods of documenting a CS in detail. The first method of documentation is note-taking. This forms the foundation of documenting evidence, even when other techniques might be superior. Notes are taken throughout the investigation, simultaneously at every stage, so that no detail is lost due to memory loss. We have seen earlier that one of the most important duties of an FRO is to note all observations at the CS. They also keep the entry and exit logs, as well as contamination logs. All these notes are transferred to the investigator. Thus, documentation done by an FRO is limited to note-taking. When the investigator does the walkthrough with the FRO, they make notes simultaneously. However, there is a fundamental difference between notes taken by an FRO and those taken by the investigator. If the FRO does not belong to the police department, they might have no formal training in CS documentation, and their priority is to assist the victim and attend to the CS. The documentation by the investigator is made keeping in mind 2 points of view. First, legal, to ensure it is upheld in the court of law. Second, forensic, to ensure it ultimately helps in CS reconstruction. Therefore, the investigator can't risk making any errors that will jeopardize an investigation. An investigator's notes at the CS specifically include the following details. 1. Notification information, which includes the date and time when notification of the crime was received at the department, and the method of notification, such as personal capacity, a telephone call, etc. 2. Arrival information, which includes means of transportation used by the investigating team, date and time of arrival at the CS, details of the personnel already present at the CS, including the FRO, etc. 3. Scene description, which includes a description of the weather, major furniture, containers that may contain disposed items, such as a trash can, any transient evidence still noticeable, clothes, and other things present at the CS. Here, the investigator must never forget to describe the exterior of the CS, which is more volatile than the actual scene. 4. Victim and witnesses description. As we have already learned, the body of a victim is not moved unless they are alive. A dead body should not be disturbed until the medical examiner approves it. After the approval, notes are taken to describe the victim. Prima facie injuries, jewelry, footwear, clothes, certain visible identification marks, the color of hair and eyes, and other details are noticed. If the victim is alive, their identity should be recorded. Also, the type of identity proof used should be noted down. Similar protocol should be followed for witnesses. 5. CS Investigators Team. Here, the duties assigned to all investigators and their names are noted. Some of them are assigned to collect evidence, some to take photographs, some to draw sketches of the scene, and so forth. Other information such as search methods adopted, equipment to be used, unintentional contamination is all noted down. Often the investigator makes separate notes for evidence documentation. Though the same evidence will get photographed later, their exact location is always noted. If the investigator fails to note any piece of evidence, there is a chance that it may not get documented in other techniques. It might get destroyed or contaminated in the process. Therefore, though these notes might not be of superior value themselves, they always assist in interpreting other documentation, such as photographs, sketches, and videos of the CS. It is always the notes that form a bridge between other methods of documentation. There are a few guidelines to remember while taking notes at the CS. 1. The notes must be made in ink and not pencil. Pencil writing can be easily erased. 2. The notes should be as brief as possible. Words like a, and, or the should be avoided. Abbreviations should be used wherever possible. 3. A bound notebook should be used rather than separate pages to keep them together. 4. Before taking the notes, the notebook pages must be consecutively numbered. This is to prevent allegations of addition or removal of pages, which should not be done in any case. If even one page is missing, it would jeopardize the investigation. 5. What if certain incorrect details are mentioned? This is not a problem. Drawing a line through them is sufficient. 6. The notes must be as thoroughly detailed as possible. Each and every step of the investigation should be mentioned. 7. Entries should be chronologically accurate, following a correct sequence. If a certain detail is missing at that moment, a blank space should never be left to accommodate it later. These blank spaces are always susceptible to wrongful addition of details, which can mislead the investigation. So, if a new detail is recalled later, it should be added on a separate page. 8. Measurements and directions at the CS must be accurately noted. 9. Opinions don't matter. The investigator must only note what they observe and should not resort to including personal thoughts in the notes. The second method of documentation is sketching the CS. Indeed, notes, photographs, and videos of the CS are important in recording, but they have some disadvantages. They do not provide an accurate representation of the size and distance relationship between the evidence and the CS, and the directions in photographs and videos are vulnerable to misidentification. Items in a photograph may look nearer or farther apart than they actually are, providing a false sense of perspective. This is why sketches are made at the CS. They represent the spatial relationship, measurements, and directions of evidence in an accurate and easily comprehensible manner. These measurements include the distance between evidence, as well as the distance between the evidence and major structures at the CS, such as a wall, immovable furniture, etc. The actual scene is a chaotic place, and it gets recorded as such in the photographs and videos of the CS. Sketches help in eliminating all the unnecessary details. Therefore, they help in providing a correct perspective of the location of the evidence with respect to the CS in the most simplistic manner. This significance of sketching is very well realized in the courtroom, where it helps in refreshing witnesses' memory. Their testimonies can be verified with the help of sketches. They also help the jury and the prosecutor to understand the CS without actually visiting it. There are two types of sketches made: rough sketches and finished sketches. The rough sketch is a freehand sketch always made by the investigator at the CS itself. However, rough doesn't mean that it should be haphazard. It must be neat enough so that when a final sketch is made in the later stages, the draftsman should be able to accurately interpret the rough sketch. The first sketch at the CS is just a rough outline of what the investigator observes, with no measurements taken. Later, an improvised rough sketch is drawn after the measurements, with the earlier sketch serving as a guide. This rough sketch will have all the measurements described on the sketch itself, whereas the final sketch will be drawn to scale with no measurements mentioned on the sketch. There are generally three techniques to take these measurements. 1. Triangulation method. Two fixed points, A and B, are assigned at the CS. Distance of evidence is measured from both the points. 2. Baseline method. A fixed line, such as a wall, is taken as baseline. Distance of evidence is measured perpendicular to this line. 3. Polar coordinate method. Here, a baseline is taken. The angle and direction of the evidence with respect to this baseline is measured. Generally, two perspectives are used in sketching: elevation and bird's eye view. The elevation method is used where the CS is to be represented in a vertical plane. It gives a side view of the CS. This is typically used where evidence such as bullets, bloodstains, etc. can be located on the walls and windows of the CS. However, bird's eye view, also known as floor plan, is the most common perspective used. It gives an overhead view of the CS. A third type of perspective, known as cross projection, is a combination of both elevation and bird's eye view. Here, most of the sketch has an overhead view, while the walls are laid out flat, extended to the floor of the scene. Therefore, cross projection is often used for indoor scenes. The investigator must be familiar with a number of sketching methods. Usually, the scene itself offers clues as to what method to use. However, the method of sketching doesn't matter as much as the investigative outlook and observation. A few points must be remembered while making sketches. Sketches should always be made on the spot and not in the investigator's office or residence. Rough sketches should always be made in pencil, but the final sketch should be made with a pen, as it should be subject to no alterations. The directions should be clearly mentioned at the top of the sketch, with north pointing upwards. Simple conventional symbols used in sketching should be used, and nothing superfluous should be introduced. A legend, which is like a guide to understand the sketch, should also be included for these symbols, letters, and numbers used, which helps the viewer understand what they represent. With that, we have completed two documentation techniques: note-taking and sketching. In the next tutorial, we will discuss the other two important techniques, photography and videography. So let's move forward and look at those now.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel for more tutorials. Support me on Patreon so I can keep making content. And as always, feel free to email me, ProfessorDaveExplains@gmail.com.